Oh, this. Hi, Dana.
Right, Chair, we're ready to start the meeting. We are live streaming and recording.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Thanks very much, Dawn. Pnawn da, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting of the North Wales Police and Crime Panel, where we are all attending remotely. I'm Pat Asprey, and I will be chairing the meeting. In addition to panel members, we also have in attendance the Police and Crime Commissioner, Mr. Arfon Jones, the Chief Exec of the OPCC, Mr. Stephen Hughes, and Chief Finance Officer, Kate Jackson. A representative from the host authority, Richard Jarvis, lead officer and lead advisor to the PCP, and Dawn Hughes, scrutiny and committee services officer for the PCP. Can everybody hear me? Yes, okay, thumbs up, thank you. Can I remind members that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed? Should the live streaming fail, the committee will continue and a recording will be available through the host authority's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available and to choose your language of choice. If you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You can also use the chat facility, but please note the chair, me, may not be able to monitor the chat facility during the meeting. All microphones will be muted. If you have indicated your intention to speak, I will invite you to turn your microphone on. If you leave your device for any reason, can you please ensure you are muted and that you turn your video off. And can I officially welcome, please, Councillor Andrew Dunbobbin to the meeting, as we have now received Home Office approval. So this is your first official meeting, Andy. Welcome. So first we'll go to the agenda, please. And can we have apologies for absence, please, Dawn?
Yes, we've had apologies from Matthew Forbes and maybe Hugh Irvine.
Right, okay, thank you very much. So item 2 is declarations of interest under the Code of Local Government Conduct. Any declarations of interest? Can't see any hands up. Arnold Woolley, please. You're muted, Arnold.
Yes, I'm just taking off. Chair, my usual involvements with the CSW work in Buckley, Community Speedwatch team.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Nobody else, I don't think? No, fine, thank you. Item number 3, urgent matters. I don't believe there are any urgent matters. Will none come to my attention up to today, Dawn? No,
okay. I'm not aware of any.
Okay, so I'll go on to announcements, please, when I've got my piece of paper up. First of all, I'd like to express, here we are, sorry. Arfon, hoffwn estyniad ein cydymdeiliad,
Arfon, we'd like to express our sympathy on your dear mother's death.
Sympathies to Arfon, whose mother died recently. Secondly, to congratulate our Chief Constable Carl Fawkes on receiving his Queen's Police Medal. Very well deserved, I believe, Carl. Number 2, there are 2 PCs that came to my attention. These are two male PCs who are based with the Roads Policing Unit, who received a superintendent's commendation for pursuing a high-risk missing person who threatened to take his own life. So our congratulations go to them, please. If you could pass that on, please, Carl.
Diolch.
That's okay. And lastly, I want to thank very much Matt Forbes for his support on the panel. His contribution, as Richard said earlier, has been invaluable, specifically on the finance side of it. He seemed to be his forte, didn't it? He was very, very good. So that is the end of my announcement. I haven't got anything else to say. So we will go on to item number 5, please, Carl, your presentation.
Diolch, Chair. Dawn, are we going to go for a share?
We are, just bear with me and I will bring it up for you. Just needed to find it. Can everybody see that?
Yes, I can.
Can you see that?
Yes, thank you, I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I start, Dawn, and then if it clicks back up properly, then it will say, Pnawn Da Pawb. It does feel a little bit strange compared to last year when we were all in Conwy doing it quite remotely this year. But and I can't see the slide bar on the right hand side, so I do apologise. But if there are questions, clearly I'll answer, try to answer. What I agreed with the chair is that I would try to talk for about 35 minutes or so. In all honesty, there was so much to cover this year with the year we've had. It was difficult to know what to leave in and what to leave out. But I've also tried to cover the questions and issues that have been raised by members of the panel specifically going through it. And I just want to say, as Pat has already done to some of the officers, I want to say thank you for the panel members for the support that you've given my teams locally as well. It has been noticed and it keeps getting mentioned, which I'm really, very grateful for. And I'm sure there'll be questions that come up through. So the first slide that I was going to put up, which is slide 3, which was around the vision and where we're going to be, and you will have seen this previously. I think it's important just to kind of go back over it again, because this is the vision that I agreed with the PCC on starting in the force. And over the last 12 months, we've worked very, very hard to clearly align both the PCC's priorities, local policing priorities, with the pillars of the vision going forward. So clearly aligning what we're going to do, and that's going to be the focus both on now and then going forward. So I just thought it was worth touching on where have we got to around delivering some of that. So firstly around people, which was one of the fundamental issues that we identified when I took over. We've now introduced a dedicated health and wellbeing strategy and a dedicated wellbeing team. And we're starting to see that focus on wellbeing and making sure our staff are healthy in the workplace and out of the workplace is really, really front and centre. One of the key elements of that was the 8-point plan. That is supporting officers and police staff that are injured on duty and making sure that we're capturing them, that we're doing the right thing, and we're looking after our colleagues when they're actually when they are being injured, and that's been really important. And we're seeing some good feedback on that going forward. We've also conducted a staff survey to understand what are the issues that are affecting the organisation, and we're addressing those issues going already around what makes us and turns us into an excellent employer. There's basically been the Federation Pay and Morale Survey, which you may have seen in the media. I'm not going to sit on an ivory tower, but we've outperformed most of the forces across the UK, which is a very positive place to be. Clearly, we always want to do more. We want to be better, but it's positive actually. It's having a difference, and we're seeing the difference going through. And we're seeing sickness down across the organisation. Now, some of this is definitely COVID related, and I'll talk about that, but consistently across the organisation, sickness is both PCSOs, police officers and police staff is at a lower level than it was last year. And we're actually trying to do some practical stuff as well. So we've just done flu immunisation jabs to 1,500 members of staff. We've done prostate cancer testing to a number of male colleagues, and that's identified some people at really high risk. So looking after the well-being of our colleagues is really important. Ultimately, they make up 80% of our cost, so it's a good business practice as well as the right thing to do for the organisation. The second one was digital, and we still have a way to go around digital, and I'll cover some of that later, but you'll certainly see that when the planning stage coming through. But we've managed to roll out 900 what we're calling 2-in-1 devices, laptops across the organisation since COVID started, which has allowed us to shift dramatically when COVID hit around working more agilely, more remotely going forward. Now that will be a fundamental part around that more agile working space as we move forward. And like this meeting, we have shifted online. So all our kind of senior management meetings now, all our local management meetings, they're all online. Interestingly, we've seen some benefits around savings, around fuel, around travel. So whilst there are some challenges around operating this environment, there's also some benefits as well. And we'll capture that going forward because it's really, really important. And the wonders of social media has gone through the roof. We've now got another 45,000 followers on Facebook that we didn't have before. And the demand through social media connections has just gone significant. And I think that's that thirst for information, thirst for people wanting to kind of get information in different ways, which is really interesting. Body worn video, if you remember last year, we talked to you around body worn video, around wanting to roll that out as personal issue. We've done that. So personally issued now to all our frontline officers and staff around body worn video devices. That's gone down really well. And we've also kept on with the uplift around tasers, which again was part of the budget last year. So whilst it has had COVID has an impact on training, we've managed to do that one. And we've been kind of leading the way around single online home in Wales. That's gone live within the last 2 weeks and fully live last week. So we've now got the single online home connection system in Wales, which allows people to contact us in different ways. And we've seen some good benefits of that going forward, which is really positive. The problem solving was the next element, and that's probably the least developed of the 3 pillars, but will kind of kick on for this next year. I've got the central team in place around problem solving, and we're training officers in problem solving across the organisation. The DEP has done over 1,000 inputs on that one, and we're seeing some real benefits. So we've got ambulance clinicians now sat in the contact centre that are allowing us to make better decisions around what we deploy to, how do we deploy with, and actually what we can do. And we've seen some demand taken out of the organisation. And for example, we've seen some really good examples around problem solving around repeat domestic violence offenders, and actually gripping that in a different way, which is really positive. And then we also talked throughout last year around proactivity, and it's been something I've been really pleased of. I'll talk about the Intercept team and the value they're having already. We've seen significant reductions in crime across the organisation, except for some areas, which is interesting, which I'll talk about. We've seen an uplift in stop and search by over 30%, so we're seeing that more proactive approach. And we've delivered that adverse childhood experience training now still across the organisation, so people are looking to signpost to places in different ways to make sure we're looking after the most vulnerable in our society. But the last 12 months has been really, really tricky, and it has been extraordinary for policing and for us. But I genuinely believe the force has both stepped up, realigned, and I've had some fantastic support from our cops, police staff, specials, volunteers, and we couldn't have done what we've done without that level of support. But it's also important that we link into our communities to find out what do they feel. So 70% think North Wales has struck the right balance during lockdown, which I think is really important, and 84% of public support the action for policing in North Wales. So I think that's quite powerful, that actually we seem to have got that balance right between enforcement and engagement, and there is always a balance there depending on times, and we've always said now that we will move to enforcement more quickly than we did at the start, because actually you can only tell people the same message so many times. So I think it's really important. So just around COVID then and what we've done, we've issued 582 fixed penalties within this COVID period. We've done 2 music event £10,000 fixed penalty notices for a music event that occurred earlier this year. COVID attraction for the force until recently has been very, very low. It is still low, but as the rest of the UK and Wales has struggled, we've certainly have over the last couple of weeks. We've had an outbreak in Colwyn Bay where we lost a significant amount of officers, but actually we've got a huge amount of support with the health and safety, local authority, and we've got those officers coming back now, which is really positive. And that's been helped by the setting up of a specific HR health desk, so people can ring in, get advice, and we can give them good advice on a daily basis. So that's been a real benefit for us. And we've still got nearly 800 staff that are remote working. So if you come to headquarters at the moment, we're about 35% occupied here at the moment, and it feels it. We've still got lots of people working agilely, remotely going forward, and that is likely to continue to some degree. Certainly been one benefit is the working relationship with, and Arbon may want to touch on this as well, the working relationship with Welsh Government, the relationship with both policy officers, the relationship with civil servants and the elected members in Welsh Government, even for me, has gone on a pace over the last 12 months. And that's definitely been helpful around making sure policing is considered as a non-devolved agency in a very much a devolved working environment. And that's been really helpful. But on top of that, we haven't forgot ultimately with the cops, and actually we need to do policing stuff. So just a couple of examples of local work that's been going on across our teams. So if we're looking in the Eastern, we've had Operation Elixir, which is 7 people arrested for conspiracy to supply drugs. In the Central, we've had Blue Cross Bill, which is a county lines operation around numerous arrests, and drugs warrant where we recovered 36,000 in cash. And in the Western area has been unusual and busy in equal measure. So we've had a really challenging kidnap that you may well have seen in the media with a 6-year-old boy that was an 8-year-old little boy that was taken. We've had the Crossbow murder and bringing that to successful outcome. So a fantastic investigation by Brian and his team over there. And then more recently, we've had the 2 charged for the recent murder in Holyhead. So the West has certainly had its challenges going over the last few months. So just going on to local policing then, I thought it was important to kind of reflect back around where is the organisation around its kind of size at this moment in time. So currently we're up to 1,592 police officers in North Wales. It's one of the highest numbers that we've been, which is really positive on the back of Operation Uplift. We have pushed on really hard around recruiting officers in on the back of Operation Uplift, and we're seeing the benefits at the moment. Our PCSO numbers are just over 200, and we've got 177 specials and 150 volunteers working from us, plus another 1,100 police staff. And we've had the first recruits coming through around the PEQF entry route, which is the degree entry route coming through. So the first cohort has come through there. That's very different to what we would have known before, but seems to be at the moment okay. But we are watching the abstraction rates because that was one of the greatest challenges at the moment. Around that breakdown then, in the West, we've got 54 PCSOs and 18 dedicated neighbourhood policing teams officers. Central, 54 PCSOs and 38 dedicated officers, and the Eastern is 76 and 25. But of course, they're all supported by their response team colleagues because they all work out the same hub, and that crossover is really important that they do a great job there. It's also important to recognise that we've only been live now for about 15 months around the OIP, which is the Organisational Change Programme. One of the biggest changes of that was the new shift pattern. And I have to be honest, I'm always nervous wearing shift pattern. I remember the chair and I discussing it before it changed, but actually it's gone down incredibly well. You know, if I'd have gone into Merseyside when we changed the shift pattern, everybody moaned at me as a deputy chief there. Funny enough, as a chief here, the shift pattern's gone down really well. It's also, though, delivering cost efficiencies, and our overtime level has dropped. We're above our DSL, so our minimum level regularly now, where we were actually bouncing around it. So it is showing some really good benefits, and actually around the well-being of our staff, it's generally considered to be much better for their work-life environments, really as well. So some real positives on the back of the OIP and where we go. So Dawn, if you could click on a couple of slides, because I'm on performance. And again, please. And again, please. Oh, there we are. Oh, back one. So I just thought I'd cover some of the key issues for us over the last 12 months and where we are around performance. The first is around investigation standards. It was an area that I think that we all felt that needed to be more focused on going forward, and that including the Commissioner. So over the last 12 months, there has been real concerns around the criminal justice system in Wales and in England on the back of COVID. We are slightly out of sync in Wales in that we're in a better position within our English colleagues. Lots of work both locally and nationally to make sure the criminal justice process flows really well, and we absolutely play our part in that. So we've had an investigation standards working group led by Sasha, who's sat on that now for 12 months. And genuinely showing some real benefits. So transforming summary justice, for example, which is a performance framework for cases in magistrates course, we are graded #1 in nationally. When we look at our discontinuance rate, we're below other areas. Our guilty rate plea going to court, we're above the national average by a long way, and likewise our conviction rate is above the national average. So all going in the right direction around the criminal justice process and making sure that the right cases are going to court, and when they do, we get the right outcomes about it, really. But it's not just all around hard performance, it is also around how does the community feel. So general confidence up in the force from 88% last year to 93% this year, which is really positive. And that we treat our communities with respect, again, has gone up from 85% to 87%. And interestingly, we started working to understand actually how do our domestic abuse victims feel. And we're seeing positive outcomes across the board around our domestic abuse surveys, which will, as our baseline increases, we'll have a better understanding of that for the future. So if I talk about crime then, because it's really important, and actually that's what we're there for fundamentally. Some of this we have to be really careful around because it's obviously we have had the COVID effect, but overall crime across the force is just under 10% lower than it was last year, which is really positive. And some of those key measures, burglary, robbery, gun crime and knife crime are significantly lower than they would have been this time last year. So for example, burglary is down by nearly 30%, violent crime by about 15%. But we are also seeing a shift in criminality. So stalking and harassment, on the other hand, are significantly up, and I'll talk about those later on. So some really good progress. And what we are seeing is a move into more digital and cyber-enabled criminality. And we are predicting for the future a significant growth in that area as both our normal criminality and also our serious organised crime and our OCG shifting into a digital space. around that type of crime. And one of the ways that we're doing to tackling to address that, if you remember from the plans last year, is we're amalgamating the existing financial investigation unit and the cybercrime team together to create a one-stop hub, so we can better investigate fraud and crime that's coming into the force in a single way, to get a better value for our victims, which is really important. Finally, on the performance, you've got to talk about HMIC. HMIC we toned down their number of inspections because of the COVID issues. But actually, if we go back to Peel, which is our last one, we were graded good across the board. The Peel strategy is likely to change going forward. There'll be a different grading category. It will look at not just what you're doing, but the outcomes on the back of it, which I think is positive going forward. But also, we've obviously got a government that is clearly keen on introducing some target measures for policing. So we'll have to feature those into that going forward. We've just recently had the rape thematic inspection. Feedback for us was very, very good, which I'm really positive, because the team have put a huge amount of effort in that. And actually, the PVPU team worked really hard to protect our most vulnerable. So organisational planning, you'll get much more on this going forward from the deputy and others, but it has been properly a build on where we were last year when we came to you to talk about planning going forward. And I think we all agreed, and certainly within the force, if we've got a good planning process going forward, it allows us to build as an organisation and a clear clarity about the asks going forward. So a proper team approach this going forward, as you can see from that slide, where we looked at last year, we took the best out of last year, recognising within COVID that we had some limitations, but actually let where this go. We formed a strategic planning group. We've introduced business plans for all the areas. We've looked at the risks, the threat, the harm, what the demand's coming in, where do we need to be for the future, and actually how do we close some of those gaps, which is very exciting. And also, one of the key bits that I pushed on is that we need to think more than the 12-monthly planning cycle, which is really difficult when you're on a 12-month budgetary cycle, but I'll leave that for others to deal with at a national level. But we've actually tried to push to 2022. So some of the issues that we'll get covered with you, if we can move on for one, please, is around the autumn statement. So we are on a one-year CSR. We expected a 3-year comprehensive spending review. Well, that's not occurred. So we're on a one-year funding settlement. That's quite tricky for a variety of different reasons, as I'm sure you're aware of. I am going to talk about ESN in some details and the future pressures around that one. The grant around the future is flat cash, so the investment that's coming in from UK government is very much around an expectation around preceptor being to £15, but actually the extra money is around the Operation Uplift programme. Year 2, that was supposed to be 8,000 extra officers for policing. It's been realigned. It's 6,000 next year and 8,000 into the second year. Some of that will go to the ROCUs as well, but we still think that North Wales Police will get a significant uplift into that of anywhere between 55 and 62 officers. COVID-19, we worked really hard to recover our costs out of COVID for COVID-19, and we recovered all our protective equipment costs, etc. But there's still uncertainty around that. We've then got the council-based growth around what we predicted, which is a 0.25%, and it's actually at 0.36. And obviously the biggest recent change is around pay. So we built into our budget 2.5% pay rise. Well, that was announced that it won't be anything. So, unfortunate, genuinely unfortunate for our staff that has worked really, really hard over the last 12 months. But that does give us a little bit more wriggle room around the budget and allows us to do some things that possibly wouldn't have been able to. So on to ESN. So I thought it was worth raising with the group around some of the real challenges around ESN, and the Commissioner is fully cited on these. So the national position around ESN, so this is the airwave replacement, effectively, as we would all know it, is that the focus is to deliver the minimum viable product to achieve safe airwave shutdown. So what can we get to make sure that we can switch airwave off and do it in a safe way by 2024, 2025? The main function of that is critical voice. So how can we talk on the radio, and when you press your patterning button, people know where you are? There's lots of other potential benefits, but that's the fundamental issue that we need cops and police staff to be able to do. The national view is that the strategic case for ESN still holds overall. Our view in North Wales, and linked across to the regional colleagues in the Northwest, because that's where we're aligned, it is a critical programme. The cost is significant, the scale is huge, and it's innovative, and its complexity is probably not without measure. Major implications for us. It's a multi-year program, which creates some challenges. It's a multi-million-pound project, and it's technically very complex, and it's obviously mission critical. If my officers can't respond to the radio, can't get support when they need it, or respond to calls, that's fairly fundamental. And we do have concerns, and I do have concerns in relation to delays, both locally and nationally. So the financial impact then, and this is obviously one of the biggest, is that the capital for North Wales over the next 5 years is 7.2 million, and the revenue is 2.6 million. Now, there are two elements of this. There's the core costs, so those bits that fund the core central elements of ESN. Now, they are picked up out of central grant, and that's the maintain and manage the whole network. But actually the non-core costs, so handheld, the devices connecting to the network, if we need extra capacity in North Wales because of our geography, for example, critical locations and core data charges are all down to us. So the underlying line there is there are some significant risks around the delivery of the project. There are some significant risks around the timescales. There are some massive issues around the cost here, and actually us having to pay for this over the next 4 to 5 years, which we've discussed in length around the commissioner on. A challenging program. They've just gone out for a new SRO for the program, and obviously got a number of different leads. It's probably the one program that causes me the most worry, in truth. So on that happy note, whilst you're all pondering questions, if I go and move on to estates, so we've not lost our ambition to improve the estate across North Wales, because in some cases it's pretty ropey. And obviously we probably all saw the iconic Wrexham police station finally coming down this year, and the drone footage of that. I'm sure there was a lot of secrets went down with it at the same time. But we are moving on. So Pwllheli station should have been finished in the summer, but obviously with COVID it hasn't been. That will be open, fully operational, open into January. The team are working really hard at the local fire station. I'm really grateful for the support we've had around Northwest Fire around there. It's not ideal at the moment, and we wanted to get them back into Holyhead. We are looking at the moment around the replacement for Holyhead police station. If anybody's been there recently, it's a little bit old, would be a nice way of saying it, and we're working with a local authority around suitable sites there. Big one for us is around Vehicle Commissioning Centre and the Armed Alliance. So we're in a rented accommodation there at the moment, which is leased. It is time bound. It needs a fair amount of time and effort. We've got some opportunities to deconflict the vehicle for commissioning element and the Armed Alliance, and we're working with the Commissioner on that at the moment around getting both those things sorted. And then additionally to that, we're working around what could be described as a Flintshire hub and what that looks like there, although there's still some debates around that one. But what we have to remember is, I think what this COVID environment has shown is that we can work differently. So some of the kind of working practices that we've always had, we probably don't need going forward. So we're just starting to think about actually how do we want to work in a digital workplace that's more agile and more flexible. And that's certainly around the headquarters estate and other areas will allow us to think slightly differently. So moving on then, I just wanted to talk about FCIN. So this is a national programme that North Wales is leading today. Actually, there's some media around it today, which the Commissioner has done with Sasha and myself. So this is Forensic Collision Investigation Network. So this is how do we investigate forensic collision investigations? And this is the advantage of having great people, because we were in a really good place around this before going back a number of years, and it's all done to hard work that has been put in over the years. But what we haven't got nationally is with the forensic regulator wanted a more clear approach around the 43 forces in the UK. We got approached to take the lead. We did do that. And Sasha has been working really, really hard to get that programme in place. Positives for us, all 43 forces are now signed the Section 22 agreement to support the work. We've had funding for year 1 and year 2. We've had 600,000 from the Department of Transport to pay for the training of the FCIs. So we're just going through accreditation at the moment. So what it will allow us to do is accreditate once in North Wales, and as long as the other hubs follow our lead, we'll be able to accredit the whole of the UK. For a force of our size and our geography, it is a huge kudos for what we've done. And the team have done it in a way that is actually starting to form best practice around actually how you can work in partnership across policing going forward. So I'm really proud of the team. They've done a great job. A lot of work still to do, but really, really positive. Moving on, one of the areas that I want to talk to is around diversity. So You know, we live in an ever more diverse society, and one of my aspirations, supported by the Commissioner, was that I wanted to make the force representative of all the communities that we serve, and we're not at the moment, but we are working hard to get there. So we've invested heavily in the last 12 months around diversity, especially on the back of the Operation Uplift programme, because it's probably a moment in time for us. So what we've done around this, we've had clear messaging and carried out events, the importance of being more representative of why. And the why is really important if we're going to get the organisation to buy in of why is this really important for us going forward. And we've received some great support. We've invested in a positive action team around those that are coming into the organisation to support colleagues through. And what we are seeing is an increased level of applications from ethnic minority colleagues, but also women into the organisation, which is really positive as well. But on top of that, we're continuing our work around the Welsh language. So our percentage increase around level 2, level 3, level 4 and level 5 Welsh language speakers has increased in the organisation over the last 12 months. And the Welsh Language Commissioner actually only recently congratulated us on some of the work and the innovation that we're doing, certainly around the Velcro badges that you may have seen on some of the officers and police staff uniform. And the PCC and I have commissioned work on both stop and search and use of force to really make sure that we understand some of the issues around there, to make sure that it's not impacting on our representation with our community. We have seen, so we recognise as well, and we talked about it last year, around the disproportion around hate crime. And this last 12 months has brought out the very, very best and the very, very worst in everybody, I think. So year to date, hate crime levels have stayed roughly stable. But bearing in mind, other crimes have dropped off. That speaks volumes in itself. And we have seen a rise in certain types of hate crime, certainly disability hate crime and transphobic hate crime. So we've developed a special tag now, which to link to hate crime to increase reporting, and we're seeing 10% now reported hate crime have been online. We've challenged online social media posts, and we're working with the industry to get better around that one. We've also created literature around online presentations, and we're working with young people around appropriate behaviour. And Alex Goss, Chief Superintendent in charge of local policing, is reviewing our approach to hate crime and hate crime support to make sure we get it right as we kind of spread the responsibility for hate crime around policing going forward. A specific issue for us within all that bundle, whilst I said that hate crime had raised roughly stable, online or cyber related hate crime is becoming ever more oh, sorry, Dawn, can you drop that one? Thank you. Online or cyber related hate crime is increasing. So it's 15.6% this year. That is going up year on year on year. And we believe it will continue to go up as the social media, as the online presence increases. And we continue to challenge that online. But it also, it's not just externally around the impact on our communities, it's also internally. So we've had officers that have been personally attacked online, been subject to some really nasty hate behaviour. So an officer recently that was involved in the recruitment approach was subject to some really nasty abuse. So it's about not just impacting supporting our communities, but also expecting the people, supporting the people that work for us as well. And to support that, we've done the promoting and supporting the True Vision Stop Hate Crime campaign. We continue on the online media postings and warnings, and also keeping safe online around people what they can do around presentations, around how do you treat people, and focusing on young people as well, because actually they're often the more likely to be subject to hate crime. Moving on to digital and cyber, which is linked but slightly separate. This is one of the most challenging areas for the future and for now around the shift of digital and cyber-related crimes. So we're seeing an ever-increasing footprint of both serious organised crime and OCGs into cyber and digital, and we definitely saw COVID shifting that behaviour quite quickly as well. We've recognised the need to invest in technology, training and capacity going forward. So it's one of the areas that we feel that we need to invest in, that we've got officers with the right technology, the right training and the right specialisms in this area if we're going to keep challenging it going forward. Nationally, the biggest threat emerging is around COVID grant fraud. We've not had any of those allocated to us, but the National Crime Agency is absolutely. Here, more locally, we still see courier frauds, we still see remittance fraud, and we still see HMIC frauds on a regular. But we have had some positive results. So the bank protocol is absolutely being seen to be positive, where we're stopping people having their money taken. And we've managed to recover just over £100,000 that we've managed to protect in the last 6 months. And we've also supported a vulnerable person in a wheelchair that had £4,500 scammed from them, that we managed to get the money back and deal with the individual. So that's really positive, but a real threat area and one that is growing. And just moving on then, please. So I said I'd talk about prevent, pursue and problem solving. And I could have talked about a lot, really, because it's a big area and it's an area that we've been working really hard on. So I thought I'd just focus on the roads policing teams and the intercepts. And ultimately, the roads policing team are there. They're keeping us safe on our roads. And we've seen that over the years. So this year, KSIs, killed, serious injury, accident, incidents on roads, we're roughly the same level as we were last year. What we are seeing, though, and we saw it in COVID, was excess speed on our roads. And we had to deal with some people with really, really excess speeds, and an ever-increasing number of positive drug tests for drivers, which is a challenge for us financially because they cost a lot to get processed, but actually really positive with taking drug drivers off the roads. And one for us for the future. But some of the bits and pieces we've continued to carry on even through COVID, Operation Darwin and Operation Ventura, which is focused on motorcycle collisions. We've also working with McDonald's at the moment to re-enliven the young driver approach, because actually we know that young drivers are more at risk. And also doing work with our cycle community as well to make sure that they're safe. So the 1.5 metre campaign that you may have seen, we've been issuing high visibility gilets, working with the 6 local authorities to keep cyclists safe on our roads. And especially with COVID, when we saw a lot more cyclists on the roads, which was great to see as a keen cyclist myself, but we want to make sure that they're safe as well going forward. The future key issues for us, we're seeing an increasing number of pursuits. So we're investing in TPAC training for all our roads policing officers to bring them to a safer resolution. Challenge of that when you end up damaging your cars, but actually it's the right approach going forward. And we're working with Welsh Government around the 20-mile-an-hour speed approach that is being coming through Welsh Government policy. Finally, on the intercept team then, they and our roads policing unit were a real step up when we went into COVID around the policing of our roads infrastructure, both around the borders, but more widely. They played a huge part in that, and I'm very grateful for the support we had with them. But also they're seeing a clear link between, when they are stopping people as an intercept team, a link between positive drugs swipes with links to organised crime groups and serious organised crime. So, you know, clearly we're stopping the right people and we're having the right input. And they've recovered just over £1.3 million worth of drugs and cash since they were being deployed on our roads, and they've arrested 130 nominals linked to crime, and another 120 nominals linked to roads policing offences. So, you know, when we set up the intercept team, supported by yourselves and the funding there, we did wonder how the impact it would have. I would say, supported now in a close working relationship with roads policing, it has been a real success for us, and we look to see that progress as it goes forward. Moving on then, as I get into the last parts of the presentation, just around protect. These are the areas that we would always say as the organisation, I'm sure it's brought by the Commissioner, that around the most vulnerable people in our society. So, you know, how do we support those going forward? So CSE has not gone away, child sexual exploitation. We still see a significant number of children working with local authority partners who are at risk of being pulled into CSE unless we continue to work together effectively together. We have seen a drop of intelligence through COVID. That doesn't surprise me in some ways, but it is a bit of a worry, because obviously there's less opportunities for agencies to come together and see these children. But that's started to pick back up again, and we saw the similar to around domestic abuse. We've seen the first slavery and trafficking risk order taken out in Wales, rating to a CSE individual, which is very, really positive. But the national lead, who is over in Norfolk, will still say CSE is a massive threat to us, especially that online CSE. I talked about stalking and harassment earlier on, so this is a growth area. So we're definitely seeing a shift into some online behaviour, in street behaviour onto online around stalking and harassment. We were also seeing that counting rules changes, an increase in demand, and also an increase in additional crimes coming through. So stalking and harassment has seen a significant growth as the counting rules have changed, but actually there's real demand in there as well, which is really important. And we're working really closely with the PVPU to make sure that that's supported. We give a quality of investigation and we protect people that are really vulnerable. And we certainly saw that when people sat in their homes going through. So I talked about the online crime. 10% of sexual offences year to date was cyber enabled, and that number is growing. So as we expected, as the whole digital world changes, so does the increase in cyber enabled or cyber dependent criminality. And we have seen an increase in reporting of children be targeted coinciding with the half term and the fire break. So when they have got those less precautions around them and less support around them, it's really clear. One thing that we are looking at the moment and working with the national lead is that it's that balance between educating children, which is absolutely the right thing to do. But if you signpost them, they often could go and look. So there is a balance there of actually how do we make sure our messages are right really going forward. I know there was a question raised around sexual offences. So when you look at the national data, North Wales as an area is out of kilter with similar forces around its sexual offence data. We are higher. We've done a number of reports now jointly with the Office of the PCC to really understand that. And what we can say, pretty certainty, it's not geographic and it's not demographic, that we've seen rises when we have improved our recording system. We've seen rises when we introduced Thrive. We've seen rises when we ran Operation Palial and other areas. And ultimately, we just think that we are in a better place in some ways than other localities. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't keep focusing on it, because actually that rise still kind of causes me a concern, and that why are we so different? But the reality is we've had the best minds that we could have looking at it. We've had external support looking at it, and there's nothing that we can see it would say, well, it's because of that. It's a combination of different issues that are all coming together that have driven up our sexual offences. And in some ways, I'd prefer to know about it rather than not know about it. Absolutely. Just talk about historical sexual offences then, which have dropped over the last 12 months. Operation Palial, which was a fantastic investigation, supported and predominantly run by the NCA. We've got total sentences for Operation Palial 146 years. A really difficult investigation. You know, the force wasn't in a great place around those investigations, but actually the NCA has supported us around it, which has been brilliant. And the other one where there's been some fantastic learnings, Operation Lenton, which was run out of Cly. We've brought offenders to justice. We've recently had 2 members that got 14 years in prison. But the good learning around how to support those that have been subject to abuse, around how you work better with partners, will be the underlying legacy for that in the organisation. And we've learned from that going forward. Finally, then, just around county lines, because it was something I spoke about last year. So the number of county lines across the organisation was going up when I spoke to you all last year. It's actually come down this year. That is a combination of things. So massive amounts of disruption work going across North Wales, very much supported by the ROCU, the Regional Organised Crime Unit, and Merseyside Police, because most of our individuals and nominals come from Merseyside. We've also had Operation Venetic, which is a national operation supported by the NCA, which has definitely taken out some of our key individuals here. And we've also had the COVID restrictions, which made it really, really difficult to travel across. But violence and cocoon remain a real threat linked to to county lines, and we won't be taking our eye off that going soon. But whilst the national stuff and the regional stuff's really important, it's also what do we do locally. So Operation Tide was an Eastern run operation by SOCU. There's been some fantastic outcomes on that one. We've had 18 defence and sentences reaching almost 150 years. And that operation ran from Liverpool to Connah's Quay, Devon and Cornwall and Scotland, and that was actually run by our SOCU team out the east. And then even more locally, we've had the work that John Aspinall and his team have done in Bangor to target those individuals there and actually safeguard some really vulnerable people, and likewise working with BTP and other agencies in Rhyl to target county lines that have impacted on those areas. So when we talk about county lines, absolute national, definitely regional, and it has to be a local approach as well. So that's my wrap up, Chair. I said about 35 minutes. I think I'm pretty much there. So I hope that kind of whistle stop through. Clearly, more than happy to try to take any questions. And if they're really difficult questions, I know the PCC's on the line.
Many thanks, Chief. That was a very interesting and informative presentation. So thank you very much for that, and congratulations to the FCIN and the Welsh language commendations you had. Questions? Hugh, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chief. That was excellent, and good to hear many of the statistics that you've just told us about. I have to say, taking a parochial position, and I've said this before, I was really disappointed when you touched on your estate strategy, to learn that there was still no mention of prestatyn in your estate strategy. Here we are, one of the largest towns in North Wales, second largest in Denbighshire. We have not had a physical police presence in any sort of estate strategy for some years now. And I really think you're missing a trick there. So I've just got to make the protest, I'm afraid. I'm sure you'll have some. I know we've discussed it before. I know I've discussed it with your area commanders, and I'll keep on discussing it until I hear something else. Thank you.
Councillor, I would expect nothing less. And and absolutely. Obviously, we've got an arrangement with the fire service in Prestatyn, as
Yes,
you're aware of. We will continue to discuss it. I can't promise anything. I genuinely can't. But I know you, the local MP there, has also had numerous conversations with me, and my commitment is we will keep discussing it as we evolve the estate strategy going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
We've got Councillor Edgar Owen and Councillor Dana Davis who want to speak, Chair.
Okay. Edgar and then Dana then, please.
It's just a remark that you made when you were talking about drink driving and drug driving, yeah? And you said that the drug driving in particular cost a lot of money. Is that correct?
It is. So we every submission that we put in for a drug drive has to be forensically assessed. So there is a cost on the back of that. But I genuinely believe the cost is worthwhile.
Yeah, but the question I've got is that you've got to take somebody to court. Can't you recover those costs through the courts back to the police?
Not at the moment, but clearly, if there's any help on that, I'd be more than happy to receive any support that's there. So no, we pay for that out of the forensic budget at the moment. That element is going up every year because we're doing more, which is right.
Okay, if they've been the ether line, okay, fair enough. But if they've done for drug driving or drink driving, I think you should pursue through the courts. And I'm just putting it out there to recover the money back. Thank you.
Diolch, Edgar. Dana.
Diolch, Cadeirydd.
Thank you, Chairman.
I've got a couple of questions. That was really a whistle-stop tour, wasn't it? At speed. So hopefully I've understood and picked out, but please tell me if I'm on the wrong line. In our September meeting, it was reported into us that our domestic abuse victims are reluctant to pursue legal action, and we were informed that a training programme was kicking off, to address that, or to support, that increase in legal action. Can you give us an update on that, please? Also, you mentioned that we have 200 PCSOs across North Wales Police now. Is there an intention to increase that number of PCSOs, or is that what your structure will hold now? My colleague has referred to the estate strategy. My understanding is that the current estate strategy that we have in place for 2018 to 2028, that's under review. And I think this panel is expecting to see the review document.
Dana frozen.
Work is in progress. When would we expect to see that? I also really share your concern around ESN. It's becoming apparent that the technology just isn't there. And the worry is that central government project now is overspent by £12 billion. And my worry around that is we're expecting a flat cash grant, central grant, but I don't think many are aware that funding pot to distribute the grant is top sliced by this ESN first. So the more that programme becomes overspent, the less flat cash we're going to get, because it all comes out the top. It all comes out of the top slice first before those grants are distributed between the police forces. So that's a massive concern, and I'd really welcome any work that we can do as a panel alongside yourself and the Commissioner to put pressure in the right area to ensure that this overspend at UK government level doesn't doesn't really result in our operating budgets getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. My final question is Teams versus Zoom, because a number of community groups, community councils, county councils all use Zoom, but the police force use Teams. And I think this is a barrier as well to local communication, isn't it? And I'm just wondering if it can be reviewed, because I know Zoom have upgraded their security and everything else. Is there a possibility that it can be, that decision, wherever it was made, can be reviewed so that we can all be using the same platform, so that we can all communicate? Because it's really important when we're in a pandemic situation that we can all communicate. And your local policing are doing fantastic jobs, and they need to be able to interact with all these community organisations and elected members, and it is difficult for all involved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dana. A few questions for you there.
I got 5, and I'm sure the councillor only said a couple.
That's Dana for you.
So if I take it in reverse order then, so the Teams and Zoom one, yeah, it's a real issue. And I've seen it when I've linked in outside the organisation. So internally, we are going to, policing and criminal justice will be Teams enabled because of the national programmes there. So we'll get rid of Skype, and Teams will be the kind of big thing that we use. But I think we're recognising more and more that we need a double option there, really, that when we're linking in with, so I did it recently with some of our groups externally, and there was a real pushback actually of our communities like Zoom, you're trying to force them on us. So the national decision was we weren't allowed to use Zoom because of the concerns around a certain country that apparently the information was going to. I'm using Zoom today and on mine, so there is some ways around it. So Dana, leave that with me. It is one that we need to review. There are some challenges though with the national police accreditation. So I can't give you a yes, but I can give you we will review it, because it was a decision made at 9 months ago and now it's moved on. Around the training package around domestic abuse, we put that on hold, unfortunately, with all of the training. So we could only deliver essential training, so PSD training, taser training. We're starting to get that coming back through now, and we're starting to deliver what we're calling non-mandatory training. So that's trying to catch up. I have to be honest, I've got a big annual leave backlog, and I've got a big training backlog that COVID has kind of hit me with. We're working our way through it. It is a priority for us. It's something we've committed with the Commissioner to do. He holds us through account to the Criminal Justice Board around it. But it is a challenge of catching up. We should have been done now, well and truly. So around ESN, any help you can give. So Keir Pritchard, who's the Chief of Wiltshire, represents policing. This is a Home Office programme. So there is a bit of us holding the Home Office to account and their feet to the fire around it, because we are a service user, as are fire, as are the ambulance, as are others. And it's important, it's seen not to be a policing programme, otherwise the accountability sits with us. We want to influence and make sure it's the right thing, rather than it being our programme. But any support around that, absolutely be welcome. The estate strategies, as far as I know, and I might get this wrong, I think it's coming early next year. So Stephen's just reviewing his estate strategy. I think you'd have had it earlier, but COVID, and that's not COVID has stopped him, but actually that's COVID has actually made us think, what do we need and how do we need it, and can we operate very, very differently? So if you look at how our officers and police staff are operating at the moment, more agilely, more remotely, more flexibly, we probably want to encourage that going forward. So that might change our estate strategy. So absolutely on that one. And the PCSO numbers, the way that the funding is, and that with the flat cash funding, and I am being given money for officers, not police staff in the main. The PCS numbers are likely to stay where they are roughly. As we grow officers, it's a little bit of an anomaly around the fundings coming through, in all honesty with you.
Okay, so happy with that, Dana? Okay, lovely, thank you. Any more questions?
John would like to speak, Chair.
John, lovely.
Yeah, good afternoon. I mean, the position, it's a good positive picture all round. But I've got a question in relation to fraud. At a national level, action fraud is largely discredited. How does this affect the victims in North Wales of fraud? Are you happy that you're giving them a positive sort of response, or is it sort of out of your hands in relation to a national picture?
So it's one area that the Commissioner and I discuss on a regular basis is fraud, because I think I think the focus on fraud, John, now and going forward will increase because of the impact it's having both on small local communities, small businesses, and actually the big impact of fraud. And it is that kind of hidden barrier of criminality and cost to the whole of the UK economy and the Welsh economy going forward. So the new team that we put in place, part of that is to make sure that we are delivering a better service, that we are getting to those issues. And actually, fundamentally, we believe locally, we should have a more prevent offer. So if somebody's been a victim of fraud, it's really difficult. But actually, if we can stop them being a victim, or we can stop them being a victim again, we can make a big difference. So that kind of local offer for me here is making sure that we're linking into certainly vulnerable victims. We're giving them good prevention advice and stopping them being victims again. There is a lot of work at the moment with the City of London and the Met around the national action fraud and where does that go for the future. It's been pulled into the city now completely under Ian Dyson's leadership. So my hope is that improves the quality of service. And if we can close the bottom up and the top down, we'll get to a position where fraud is recognised for what it is, a serious crime, and actually we deliver a better service, because the impact of fraud, as you all know, on some people is horrific, and we've seen some really, really poor, bad examples of where it's impacted. And as I said in the presentation, we are seeing OCGs and serious organised crime moving into the fraud arena much more than we have before, because actually they can do it in a very remote way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, lovely. Andy, you had your hand up next, please.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Apologise for me video and audio going off before. Some technical difficulties my end, and just apologies now, just in case there's been a similar sort of question asked. But I would like to ask about the spend and the resource being used for each of the 10 neighbourhood policing teams, and what I'd like that to include the community support officers Welsh Government have provided as well. And the other question, Chief Constable, is that has North Wales Police class misogyny as a hate crime as well? Thank you, Chair.
So I am the national gender lead for policing, councillor. So I'm actually doing some work at the moment for Police Chiefs Council around misogyny. So NPCC doesn't have, National Police Chiefs Council doesn't have a position on misogyny. I think it should do going forward, and I'm doing work for that to kind of bring that to position. We don't have a position on it at the moment in North Wales Police. There are only 5 forces in the UK that record it, but they record it because obviously there's no criminality on the back of it unless it links to another crime type. But the Law Commission work at the moment, which I've just put a response back into, is raising questions around misogyny, other types of hate crime, and actually should the definition of hate crime be broadened out much wider than it is at the moment. So that's going through at the moment. That will report back early part of next year into the Home Office and UK Government. I genuinely don't know where it will go after that, in truth. But in the meantime, we are working on the policing approach on where should we be. There are lots of people that say we should do. There are lots of people that say that we shouldn't, so it's a tricky one to go through. But I will report back as I make progress with that at the moment. Around your question, you may have missed the bit in the slide. Then, if your technology was on, so at the moment in time, the force establishment is 1,600 officers. Of that, when you break down to local areas, we've got in Western area, we've got 54 PCSOs and 18 officers on neighbourhood teams. So these are the officers that are dedicated to neighbourhood policing. Additionally to that, we've got response officers. So if you look at Wrexham Town, for example, the neighbourhood team and the response team work out the same base, and they cross roles. In Central, we've got 54 PCSOs and 38 officers, and Eastern, we've got 76 PCSOs and 25 officers. Additionally to that, we've got officers in PVP, PCSOs in a PVPU. We've got PCSOs in investigations as well. So they are those are the uniformed PCSOs that are out and about. Partly funded by Welsh Government, partly funded by the force.
Okay. Any more questions?
Nigel and Alan.
Nigel, yeah. Alan first, then you, Nigel.
Not so much a question, Carl. It was just to commend the work being done by the Intercept team and the sense uplift that you've had in stop and search. That highly visible policing is something that the public like to see. I know a lot of it's going behind closed doors now, and that tends to be the future. But I've actually seen quite a bit on the A55, and certainly in my ward, which has problems with drugs. There's been a lot of work around there as well. So the work that's been done is greatly appreciated, and I just wanted to note my thanks for the work that's done along those lines.
Thank you, and I'll really make sure that information gets back. And we've got some bits that will come through to the panel next year around the potential for the future around the Intercept team and how that links with the drones unit. So some exciting things to go.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, Nigel, and then Hugh.
Thank
Nigel.
you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. A couple of questions. First of all, regarding COVID, I think he said 582 fixed penalties have been given out at the moment due to COVID-related offences, and there'll be more enforcement from now. So obviously, COVID is on the rise, as we all know at the moment. What has been the force's policy before now, as regard to warnings before prosecution, and what's the policy from now, please? Because it's fine having rules and regulations, but if they're not enforced, then it's never going to go away. That's the first one. And then the other one is regard burglaries. You said that it is down 30% this year at the moment. Headline number sounds very good. Do you put that down to actually crime has changed and burglaries and the flavour of the month, or is it purely down to people at home more this year? So there's less opportunity for burglaries. And relating to that also, have you seen an increase in distraction burglaries this year because of people being at home?
Okay, so I'll get those in order. So when we started COVID, you'll all remember that there was a lot of conversations around the 4 E's approach, which was engage, explain, encourage, and then enforce. So that was the work that we went through. The conversation I've had with my officers now and Nige Harrison, so we've got a standing command structure around COVID because it's that much of a pressure on us even now. So Nige Harrison has led that as a temporary ACC. Many of you will know Nige. He's certainly a character, bless him. But he's led that all the way through. What we said is you will work through your 4 E's at the start. Well, actually now we move to much more enforcement much more quickly, because if people know what they should and shouldn't be doing, they know what the right things to do. And there's always those people that kind of get it slightly wrong, and that's fine, and we'll make sure that we do the right thing. But if somebody's blatantly abusing it, whereas at the start we would have gone through the 4 E's, we are now moving to enforcement much more quickly. So in this last tier, we've had about, I think we've had 28 enforcements in this since we last went into there, and we've moved to enforcement much more clearly. The music events, people knew they shouldn't have a music event, which is why we issued 2 10K fixed penalty notices there. So it is a shift of approach, but that shift of approach is mirrored by the vast majority of policing. The vast majority of our fixed penalty notices are people travelling in, so it's been travel related. So we are disproportionate in that we're disproportionate of people travelling into Wales rather than our own communities, if that makes sense, Nigel.
Yes, thank you.
Around the 2 issues around burglary. So two things connected really. We definitely saw a drop in burglary through COVID because everybody was in the house, so it was really difficult to burgle. But we've not seen that uplift afterwards actually, as people have gone back to work again. So whilst the level is disproportionately low because of the COVID impact, it hasn't actually gone back up again either. So there is a positive of actually it's had an impact. And around distraction burglary, I would have to double check. It's not been raised as a threat for me, but as we know, distraction burglaries, and especially distraction burglaries against the most vulnerable, are more into the winter months, and we see that coming through. So if it is going to start, it generally starts at this time of year. But I'll make sure we get back to you with an answer to that one, because I don't know, and I don't want to give you some false information on the back of that.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, Hugh, you're next, please. Hugh? Yes, Hugh, you're on mute.
Yeah.
There we are.
Thank you. Is there a statistic regarding whether these fixed penalties take the two £10,000 ones? Is there a statistic regarding are they being paid or are they being enforced?
So so we've got a number of, and we can get that to the panel. I haven't got it here, but what we've got is the number we've issued, the numbers that have actually gone through to ACRO, which is a central body that's managing them, those that have been bounced back to us because they needed some more evidential impact, and actually then how many have been paid on the back of it. So the £10,000 are the most obvious. There are very few across the UK that have been paid. Most are choosing to go to the magistrate's court and fighting the case through the magistrate's court. There is a much greater number of the smaller £60, £200 fixed penalties that have been paid. We've got that data. I'm more than happy that we can share that through with you.
Okay, anybody else before I no.
Oh, sorry, Richard would like to come in.
Oh, Richard, right, go on then, Rich.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just for information really for members, Carl and the OPCC. For the last couple of months, we've been a member of the National Association for Police, Fire and Crime Panels, and they have a number of work programmes, and one of them is in relation to technology changes and the impact on budgets. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but the National Association has written a letter on behalf of the panels to the Home Secretary in relation to ESN, and not only ESN, but also I believe there are other IT projects being run by the Home Office, criminal records database, a DNA bio database as well. So the Vice Chair of the National Association, Evan Morris, who I believe is Chair or Vice Chair of Cheshire Police and Crime Panel.
He's Chair.
Chair, thank you. Is leading on sort of technological changes and the impact it may have on budgets. So again, just so you're aware, because I'm not sure that there's much that we can do, obviously, as a panel, because it's very much a national programme. But just wanted to make you fully cognizant, really, that it is being picked up by the National Association, and as a member of that, there is an exec committee meeting every month, and we get the minutes. So I will keep you updated of any progress there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Richard. A couple of questions from well, no, one of the things I noticed from the Federation magazine, Your Voice, which is very useful, is that you've got a buddy scheme which helps support BAME recruits. How do you choose the buddies for the recruits?
So what we recognised, Chair, is that it's great having people coming into the front door, but you need to retain them, value them, and progress them through the organisation. So if you're coming into Wrexham and you're the only black face in the parade room because you're the only person from a visible ethnic minority there, you know, it can feel really difficult and really challenging. So to answer your question, all the buddies are volunteers. They've been supported by BAPA, the Black and Asian Police Association, and we've had great engagement through them. It does help that one of the key members of BAPA sits on the positive action team, and they are volunteers internally to support through. And it and genuinely it seems to be so. They'll be allocated when they're coming through the process. They'll be allocated when they start joining the organisation, and then they'll support all the way through. Because I do worry that if if people don't see people like them in the organisation, we'll lose them. And I want to maintain if we are going to become more representative as an organisation.
Absolutely, yes. Because is it 1%? Is it? Did you tell me that you have?
Yeah, so for the first time in living memory, we've now tipped over just over 1% of our officers are from a BAME background. That number is growing, so that's really positive, but we're still nowhere near where we want to be. And it's difficult with the census data being so out of date, but we think the population in North Wales is about 2.5%. That's definitely aspiration to get there. And if we're going to get there now, with the uplift programme is the time to really push on to do it. And we seem to be making some real progress. We've got a number of people coming through. We did an online event the other day. We had 120 people from across North Wales, many of them BAME, kind of linking into us, and we were selling the force around the opportunities to come and live here, and it was really, really positive.
And you also sent teams out to different areas, I believe, haven't you?
We have. That's probably been the most impacted, really, because obviously with COVID, it's been more difficult. So if we look at Bangor, for example, and the university there, it has a really big BAME student base. Well, we should be looking to actively recruit from there. We need to get to local communities engagement locally. So the Positive Action team have been doing that. It's not been quite the plan we had when we put it in place 12 months ago, but it is making impacts and being more punchy around that and making North Wales a place that people want to come to, that they want to stay to and actually work with us with.
Good. Right, my next question is, thanks very much for that, Carl. I'll keep an eye on that one. There's a particular issue locally about online hate crime, and you mentioned that you're sort of looking at re-evaluating what hate crime is. Once you've identified the perpetrators of online hate crime, malicious communication, what are the consequences for the perpetrators?
So we can work with it. We can work with the social media providers to get the content taken down, and we've got some really good examples where we've done that. We can work with the individual that's been subject to it to make sure that they've got the protections. And in some cases, we can actually prosecute with certainly from around the hate crime legislation. We can prosecute around that. The challenge is, and it is a challenge, is that kind of when does free speech become hate crime, and that balance between the two. And we've managed to get through some cases supported by CPS all the way through. But it is a challenging area of, well, I've got free speech. I'm allowed, this is my personal view of the world, and that becomes really, really tricky. So it's definitely an area that is going to become more and more of a demand driver for us. And it's not as easy as just telling somebody to turn off the social media account, is it? Because actually, it's so much part of people's lives. I get trolled by a variety of interesting individuals, and the obvious is just don't use it anymore. But somebody that I do, probably like many of you on there, it's part of your work, isn't it? It's part of who you are. So it's very, very difficult.
It is, but it doesn't mean to say it has to be acceptable, does it?
No, and one of the first things that we'll say to anybody that has been subject to language abuse or behaviour online is to challenge straight back and to get straight back into the social media company. And if it is of a level, we will absolutely put it through, and that we'll investigate. And we have done that really successfully as well.
Okay, lovely. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other further questions for the Chief Constable? Right, Arnold. Thank you, Arnold.
Take myself off mute there. I've been sitting listening to all the positivity, which I like to hear. It's all good stuff. But perhaps a little parochially, I have to put a couple of counterpoints on that. Speaking for the people of Buckley, frankly, the view is that the police force are an invisible entity. Recently, we had a report to me of one of our residents trying to report what was basically antisocial behaviour and having great difficulty in getting any form of record or response because they didn't want to give an incident number to it. Now, that might be an isolated incident, but a few weeks ago, unfortunately, Buckley Town Council had on lease a vehicle which we used as our operations network when we hold events like the fireworks display and Christmas fireworks and fun days. And that sat in the back of our yard at the town hall. that was thoroughly and completely vandalised and destroyed and had to be got rid of. The regrettable thing about it was that when our officers phoned and requested scenes of crime to come out, the answer they got was a great deal of reluctance on the grounds that if they attended, there would have to be an incident number. Now, you speak, Chief Constable, about numbers of crimes being downwards. Is that because there is a reluctance to record them on the part of your staff? The final point I make is one perhaps a little personal and parochial to my CSW team, who do try to do something about the item you mentioned on high speeds around the roadways. The team was out this morning in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. We recorded another dozen speeders between 36 and 40 in the 30-mile-an-hour zone. But from our team, we find that we are almost an isolated activity. 2 weeks ago, I raised a question, fired into our connections with the force. I'm still waiting for an answer.
Chief?
So around speeding, we still concentrate on the Fatal 5. It's still a priority for the Roads Policing Unit. The Go Safe vans were out this morning. I know because I passed one coming into in our way because it was down in the Trevenant Valley. So we are actually out and about, and we will continue to focus on speeding as well as the other issues. Around the vehicle, that's criminal damage. It's a crime. It should be recorded a crime. If it hasn't been, if you'd like to send me the details through, I'll make sure it has been. Around the deployment of CSI, the CSIs will deploy if they think there is if there is a likelihood of a forensic recovery. We will not send to every incident. We will send them to burglaries, absolutely. But vehicle crime, it'll only be if we believe there is going to be a forensic recovery at that scene, which is the decision we've made. So it may be that the language was used was inappropriate, councillor. I can apologise for that. And we do need to be really clear is that we'll go to CSIs will go to things that we think we're going to get a recovery. They will not go to every single incident, but it's not around an incident report. It is a criminal damage to a vehicle. It's criminal damage to a vehicle. It's a crime. So there is absolutely no thing for me around not recording. Quite reverse, we still do reviews around our recording of crime, and we're still pretty happy about where we are. And if you look at Manchester recently, you understand why it's really important that our crime recording is as accurate as can be. There is a balance around how many people do you put into that world, because it can consume you, but it is around, isn't it, of when people ring in, they need to know that actually we're going to take their issues seriously. And if that hasn't been the case, and if you'd like to send me the details, we'll actually absolutely have a look at it and see what's occurred, because it's not right.
Happy, Arnold?
Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Andy?
Thanks for your indulgence, Chair. And I just got this down in my notes as another question that's come to mind, Chief Constable. You're saying about the domestic abuse training was put on hold because of COVID. So how many officers has that meant won't be getting any training, and who's delivering the training, and what's been the cost of that, please? Thank you.
So I can answer some of that. I can't answer it all. So the training was externally supportive, as the Commissioner's aware. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't just, and I use this language because I am one of them now, grumpy, miserable old cops delivering domestic abuse training. We needed the third-party element in there to really challenge what we're doing and make sure the understanding around why it's really important. They will be getting it. It was only put on hold as we focused on priority training, as in officer safety stuff, firearms training, etc. So that's all kicked back in, or is kicking back in now. I can give you the update if you can, if you allow me to, for the next meeting around how many we've got, when we've got, and when we'll all be trained up as an organisation. And we've the funding bit I'll have to look at because I don't know.
Okay. All right, Andy. Anybody else got a question before? No, I think we've no, John's got a pen up. No, that's it. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Carl. You're very welcome to stay in on this, but I'm sure you've got other things to do.
Well, I don't know about there, but it's lashing it down with rain here, so I don't fancy going out, put it that way. But no, thank you all. It's really appreciated. I know there's a few answers there that need picking up, and I'm more than happy through the chair to get those back to you as soon as we can. And certainly Councillor Woolley's issues, if he'd like to feed them through to me, I will absolutely get them looked at, because that's not where we want to be.
Okay. Should we do them through you, Dawn? to the chief, or do you want to do them direct? How do you want to do it, Dawn?
Whichever. I can collate them and then send them to.
Yeah, maybe if you send them to Dawn, then Dawn's got the overall picture, please, Arnold, or anybody else has got any further questions. Okay, all right, lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Great. Can I just go back to, sorry, there's one of the announcements, back to item number 4 before I go on to number 6. Very remiss of me. When I first joined the panel, I was interviewed by County Councillor Charles Jones from Gwynedd, and it's very sad I heard that he died recently. So I want to extend my sympathies to his family too. A very honourable and kind man. I had the pleasure of sitting next to all the panel meetings. So great loss to Gwynedd. Perhaps we could write to Mr. Jones's family, Dawn.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, lovely. So we'll go on to item number 6, please. The minutes, pages 3 to 16. So you've all had the opportunity to read them. Just page 3. If you shout out if there's any corrections. Page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. John, are you putting your thumb up? No, sorry, 11. 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16. Are they, can I have a proposer, please, that these are correct? And a seconder. Thank you, Dana. Who was the seconder? Thank you, Hugh. So there, that's all right. Next item is number 7, standing agenda items. Update on actions from previous meeting. Dawn?
I don't know whether whether Stephen's got any updates to share. Or whether they're in the periodic
with us?
Yes, Stephen's with
I
us.
am, Chair. I am. I'm still here. Hopefully you can see me.
Oh, there we are. Yes, you've just swapped places.
I'll stand to be corrected, but I would hope that the actions from the last meeting, we have either dealt with them directly ahead of today's meeting, or members will feel that they've been suitably covered off in the Chief's presentation that we've just heard.
Anybody got any comments? No? No, that's fine. Lovely. Diolch yn fawr, Stephen.
Thank you.
So questions to the PCC submitted in accordance with the procedure for questions to the Police and Crime Commissioner.
We haven't received any, Chair.
None, okay. And so we go to C, member champions. John, do you want to start? Where are you, John?
Yes, I can do. In respect of serious and organised crime, I think the Chief gave a number of examples of that in his speech. And also in the bundle of dockets we've got, I think Ardwell makes mention of a number of good cases as well. So that's all ongoing, and there have been some good cases over the last 12 months. In respect of domestic violence and sexual harassment, I've spoken with Rian at length. She gave me a ring, and we had a telephone conference for well over an hour, and she went through the various aspects of how the force deal with it, and especially the roles of domestic violence officers, which I found really useful. And she is preparing for me an aid memoir or a briefing document on the role of domestic abuse officers and also independent domestic violence officers. So that'll be useful when I get it through. In addition, I've had forwarded to me today the North Wales Police Stalking and Harassment Practice Guide, and that's an aid memoir which has been produced for officers. So I haven't had a chance to look through that yet, but that'll be a useful document as well.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Okay. Dana, you next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my feedback really, I'll defer to the budget agenda item in 8B. I think as well that apologies, Chair. My phone's ringing. I'm really sorry. I'll defer to the agenda item in 8B and come back to you.
Okay,
in
lovely.
That Thank you, Chair.
That's fine. If you want to answer, that's fine. Hugh, have you got anything to report then, please?
With apologies, Chair, I'm afraid not. I had a meeting scheduled with Stephen Hughes and his team to update on the neighbourhood policing affairs. Sadly, just as was shortly before going to it, I managed to get myself involved in an accident. So instead of meeting with Stephen, I spent a week in Glenclwyd Hospital having replacement hip surgery. So I'm sorry, but I am back.
That's
and I
all
will
right.
in touch, Stephen.
Glad to see you're better here and I'm back on your feet. I'll ask Ganghara to contact you and we can arrange a suitable time to have a catch up early in the new year.
That would be appreciated if we could do that.
No problem.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. I've had some briefings up from Liz and Helen. Modern slavery. It's about we mentioned the new vulnerability and exploitation board that you're going to chair, Stephen, I believe.
I am,
yeah.
yes.
You are chairing. That's going to be a very exciting, that's going to probably be one of the major things, isn't it, for modern slavery? So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops going along. And you're going to having quarterly meetings following the recruitment of a new detective inspector for the force exploitation unit.
Yes. So I think we touched on this at the last meeting where I think we'd only just had the very first meeting of the Vulnerability and Exploitation Board. We've had another meeting since then, and the next one is scheduled for mid-January. So it's still early days, Chair, but I would say that it's going well. It is a challenging agenda, as we discussed last time. You know, you've got some significant agenda items there. That you've got domestic violence, you've got sexual violence, modern slavery, all the other forms of vulnerability and exploitation, which are countless, and then the overall ownership of the regional strategy for vulnerability and exploitation as well. So it is a challenge. However, there's some fantastic opportunities there as well, and we've made a really good start. So we'll obviously keep you posted as we make progress with it. And when I feel it's at the stage that I can, I will of course share that strategy with you all as well.
It's a lot more joined up thinking, isn't it?
Yes.
So instead of people working in silos, and also the OPCC and Admon have been successful in getting funding of 3,000 to made for the immigration crime programme. It's not a lot of money, but how will you spend that? It's
going to go towards when COVID allows, but it will go towards organising an event to raise awareness of these issues across the region. So similar to the ones that you've been involved in the past. If I recall, that's specifically what the money was actually ring-fenced for.
Because that conference was excellent.
Yes. So
we just done a 3-day conference online with the APCC. What do they call, Richard? The group that did them, Frontline Consulting. And what's become quite apparent is that the champions role is working very well, because I logged into the modern slavery workshop, and I knew, except for some of the data, I'm thinking, well, I know that. So it was really interesting, and yet other panels maybe not as au fait as they sometimes should be with what's going on. Anyway, so good. So then the other one was Helen with the child sexual exploitation. The big thing is the independent return home interviews. It's a statutory requirement. This is particularly for the elected members, again, to keep reminding your authorities that this should be done, because it's done through the NIAS, isn't it? National Youth Advocacy Service. Yes, am I right? They're involved, aren't they?
And Jeff, I can come in.
Hello, putting down, Garon.
Are you okay?
Crest Advisory, who published a report on county lines, we're particularly critical of a lack of system for return to home interviews by local authorities. So it's still an ongoing issue. as far as I'm concerned, and I would really look forward to a resolution of it.
I think all we can do is keep reminding those people present who are elected members, to keep pressurising that it happens in their authorities. I know some authorities are better than others, but it needs to be consistent across North Wales and anywhere else, doesn't it?
At the moment, children who go missing either from home or from care have got a postcode lottery of services if they're being exploited across North Wales. That's the reality of the situation.
Well, we'll keep banging the drum then. So that is the main thing. And I wish Helen all the very best. She'll be going on maternity leave in February.
She will
So
indeed.
she will be a lot. She will be a loss, but I'm sure you'll replace her.
Yes, just so you're aware, the advert will be going out internally first. We're going to see if we can identify somebody internally within North Wales Police for a 12-month secondment opportunity in the office. I think that's a good opportunity for somebody who already has that operational knowledge. I think that would be of assistance to our office as well. So we hope to have somebody appointed before Helen starts her maternity leave, so we can have a short handover period as well.
But yes, handover period is crucial, isn't it? It's right. That's fine. Lovely. Thank you very much, Marianne. So we go on to item 8, please.
Sorry, I think Donna's still got a hand up. I'm not
sorry,
sure
Donna, beg your pardon. You're going to come in on your right.
Apologies, Chair. Yeah, my phone stopped ringing now. Yeah, I really did want to thank the finance officer as well for all her time and knowledge and experience as well. She makes it easier as a finance champion to report into panel and to give panel the information it requires to scrutinise the budget. So I really wanted to offer my thanks to her. I take on board the information that Richard passed on to panel with regards to the ESN, but I do think it would be very appropriate for this panel and the Commissioner and prudent as well for a letter to go to express concerns to the Home Office with regards to the budget and the technology around because the technology is just not there, and our budget's getting top-sliced as they continue to follow this this plan. So I would like to move really that we issue a joint letter in consultation, working with the Commissioner to the Home Office, because I think ESN is one of the crucial pressures on our budget. And it would really be remiss of me, Chair, if I didn't address Avon, considering we've both worked together previously on Wrexham Council. So on behalf of Wrexham's Labour Group, Avon, I want to express our deepest condolences at the loss of your mum. I firmly believe our parents shape us, and that shape and influences who we are and the type of people we become. So we owe our parents really a huge debt of gratitude. And I wanted you to know that you and your family are in our thoughts at this sad and difficult time. You take care, Avon.
Diolch, Dana.
Thank you very much, Dana. Will you work with Dawn on drafting a letter?
Yes, happy to do that. And we can work with Avon's office as well.
And Kate and whoever, and Steve, whoever. Yes?
Yes.
All right, Dawn.
Definitely.
Yes?
Yep,
okay.
that's fine.
And then if whatever we get from the Chair of Cheshire, Evan Morris, we can perhaps have a look at that as well. I know he's written, well, I think I sent it on to you, didn't I, Dawn? His article, or was it you, Stephen, Richard, I sent it to?
He's written an article in the, is it the Policing Insight as well?
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about, yes. Okay, because it's quite complex. Right, okay, we'll go to, nobody else, is there? No. We'll go on to item 8 then, please, to consider reports by the Police and Crime Commissioner. Pages, periodic up to date 17 to 37.
Diolch, Cadeirydd.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the invitation here today. I think that the Chief Constable and you as champions have covered a lot of what I have in this report today. I'll mention a few things not in the report. A survey has gone out to the public in North Wales asking about the level of precept, as I mentioned, every year. That closes on the 15th of January. If the panel hasn't completed the survey, then they may consider doing that. To date, 300 have completed the survey, which isn't sufficient really. It is obviously people have other things on their minds at the moment. The second thing is, I think that packed your community, your choice, I think that has now closed, and hopefully there will be many community groups who have applied for this funding. We have increased from 40 to 60,000, so that means that there are 18 community groups, 3 in each local authority, who will gain benefits from this funding of 2,500 each. As the Chief Constable has mentioned, there is quite a bit of demand for policing and how we take action against people who don't comply with the guidance on the COVID. There has been funding from the Home Office around the PPE cost, etc. But there is still a shortfall in the requirement to continue with the work. As far as priorities are concerned, the report looks favourable. The data around domestic abuse is improving. The repeat crime, that is falling. I don't know if you have seen the report, but the census has been published recently about the number of women killed by men. If you haven't read the census, then I would recommend that you do that, in particularly John as leader on this piece of work. It does provide information on the data. There's still an issue around domestic abuse, and we have to carry on doing the work. As the Chief Constable has mentioned about stalking, I was interviewed by the university recently by the how the North Wales Police deal with the stalking, and I had a comprehensive discussion about these in our targets. I have a copy of a letter which was sent to the inspectorate. If you want to see it, I'm happy to share it.
If anybody'd like one, please ask Dawn to get. Would everybody like a copy? Yes, Dana. Yeah, dyna ni. Ia, so ti'n gyrru rhywbeth ymlaen?
Yes, if you could send the information forward, please. Yes, I'll ask Gemma to forward it on to Dawn. Thank you. Right, we've also got a comprehensive report on modern slavery. There is a survey of the department about the vulnerability unit, about modern slavery and sexual exploitation of children and how things need to change. There is consultation with chief officers ongoing. I have mentioned previously about the modern slavery data. I haven't been happy, but things will change. the focus at the moment about the female exploitation. A lot of work will be done there to identify vulnerable women. I've also met about criminalisation of people making a living out of sex workers and exploiting them, etc. That was quite an interesting meeting, but there is a real need to change culture around male or female involved in sexual exploitation. As you can see, and as the Chief Constable mentioned, things are looking favourable around serious and organised crime, groups dealing with drugs. But as we also know, the issue, there is still demand for drugs and there is someone who will supply. So the information around these groups, there is a need to see how we can reduce the demand for drugs as well. I would like to congratulate North Wales Police. There was an incident in Wrexham back in June this year. I know it hasn't had as much attention compared with murders in other parts of North Wales. But after the thorough work, the Crown Prosecution Service has prosecuted a person for that, and that was an investigation over 6 months, and I very much hope they will succeed with the legal process. So I'd like to thank the team within North Wales Police who was successful in bringing this issue to an end. Thank you very much. I haven't got anything else, but there's plenty of information if you have any questions. You've taken over from me now. I was going to ask if they had any questions. Dylan, you can go first.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we've done really well. We're an hour and 3/4 into the meeting and nobody has yet mentioned Brexit. But unfortunately, I'm going to mention Brexit. And that's because there was an article in the Sunday Times yesterday entitled Light Touch at Borders to Head Off Freight Chaos. And as we all know, Holyhead Port is the second busiest port in the United Kingdom. And despite the Welsh government and the UK government and the local authority and the police service all working together to try and put the necessary procedures into place, it's inevitable that there will be some chaos at Holyhead Port come the 1st of January onwards. And this article goes on to say this: plans for a light touch regime at the border, waving through most freight traffic, were confirmed on Friday in a no-deal planning meeting chaired by Boris Johnson. Who knows if it's going to be no deal or not? I'll leave that. But it says the decision not to impose major checks initially could leave Britain vulnerable to people smugglers and other criminal gangs. And of course, we're also facing the daunting prospect of losing access to the database of information that we have at the moment with our European partners, whereby we have criminal suspects that come through the ports automatically being pinged on police computers at the moment. But my question to the Commissioner is this: if this sort of light touch at the borders happens from the 1st of January, is there a danger that there will be more sex workers being trafficked through Holyhead Port, which will impact on the ability to tackle modern slavery? Diolch.
The truth is, Dylan, if it's going to be a light touch at the borders, it's going to be very similar to the status quo at the moment, because that's what we have, is light touch at the borders. Most of the work that's been done by the Border Force and counter-terrorism at Holyhead, the same as every other port, is intelligence-led policing. You know, there are very, very few haulage that are actually rummaged by immigration enforcement. The nearest immigration enforcement is Colwyn Bay, with the main office in Liverpool. I've obviously warned time after time with 4, 5, 6 press releases about the loss of what we call these 32 tools that we use. You know, the European arrest warrant and you know, stuff like that. It is going to impact on policing. There's no two ways about it. And people have been warning for years of that we're going to be less safe and less secure. Now the reality is here. So no, I am not surprised that there's going to be light touch. It's just we carry on as per normal, really. You know, it's time will tell. You know how bad it will be, but you know we're going from a system where we're not on top of everything, but I think we're going to be on top of less things as things progress with Brexit.
Mm. Anybody else got a question for the PCC?
Dana, Eric and John.
Dana, Eric and John. Okay, Dana, you go first then.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Apologies, Arfon, I have got about 5 questions.
All right. Let me make
Oh
another.
no, not really.
On page 19, where you're reporting in about stalking and harassment, you're talking about a year-to-date reduction in recording crime, increasing to a reduction of 9.8. So can you just clarify, is that 9.8% the overall total reduction, or do we need to compound that figure up? So that's my first question. My second question, I think panel have had some concerns, as well as yourself, with regards to the Strategic Victims and Exploitation Board, about that becoming a single board. So if you can include updates in future reports as to the effectiveness of that single board, I think that would be useful to panel. We need to keep an eye on that. The chair's alluded to this, where there's concerns around the return to home interviews for missing children. Have you identified best practice, if any, across North Wales, so that we can go back to our local authorities and direct them to where the best practice is? I don't know whether you're aware, Alfon, I'm sure you are, but there's been some press around your published expenses and about some corrections needed. I'm just wondering if those corrections have been made and whether it's your intention to republish that corrected expenses if it's required. And my final question is around the appointment of recruitment consultants for work around the audit committee. And I'm just wondering if you've considered looking at the term of the audit committee members, if possible. Does that need to be increased to reduce the recruitment costs? Diolch, Cadeirydd.
Okay.
Chairman.
Yes.
The first question, the 9.8 figure is the total crime. The number 2, and I think Stephen will expand on this, the exploitation board has now got 2 task and finish groups underneath it. One looking at modern slavery, one looking at vulnerability. RHI's best practice, because we've got members from all 6 local authorities here, perhaps it's a conversation we need to have outside the meeting, Dana, so we can let you know who's good and who's not so good. Published expenses, my understanding is that we immediately corrected them and have been republished. That's my understanding. Consultants, I can't remember, is it 3 or 5 years? I'm not sure how long they are there, but I'm open to an extended contract to save money. I don't have a problem with that, but I'll have to speak to Stephen and Kate about that. I don't know whether Stephen wants to come in on some of these.
If I can, please. So just to confirm, yes, the The expenses, yeah, it was pointed out to us that it was one column on one spreadsheet wasn't adding up correctly for some reason. So I think within about half an hour of being made aware, the correction was made and the correct version was published onto the website. So we dealt with that one as soon as we possibly could. The recruitment of Jack members will actually feature in the next update that you receive, because we have just gone through the recruitment process. Kate may correct me. My understanding is that they're appointed for a 3-year term with an option to extend thereafter, and for their own personal circumstances, a few of the existing Jack members weren't able to extend their term to have. So as soon as we've confirmed the appointment of the new members, then we will share that information with you and the process that we went through with the consultants.
Can I just come in there? I wasn't able to raise my hand for some reason. Yeah, that, as Steve said, they are 3-year appointments, but they are extendable up to 10 years. And it's good that we have some turnover, because that keeps continuity when members leave. But as Steve has said, the 3 that we've recruited, they are to replace members who left for their own reasons, not because we particularly wanted to recruit straight away or so soon after recruiting last time.
Have we got more questions, Dana, before we go to Eric? Is it Eric?
It's just to reiterate, Chair, that it's good that we've got an extension within the contract. I don't know whether it's worth looking at potentially extending, increasing the original term from 3 years. It's just obviously we're going to be seeing recruitment costs potentially on a 3-year basis. And it's just something I was considering as a way of reducing those recruitment costs, because budgets are getting squeezed in all directions. So if that's something the Commissioner's Office could look at, it may not be feasible because it's a specialist role, and I recognise that. But I do think we need to be asking the question as panel of whether, that recruitment term, the initial term of 3 years, could be looked at as a way of reducing those recruitment costs.
Okay, I'm sure, Kate, you will be in touch with Dana at some point, won't you?
I think that's a fair challenge, Chair, from Dana and current climate. So yeah, that's something that Kate and I will pick up. Thank you.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Stephen. Eric. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can I, in the first place, thank Arfon for a comprehensive report. There are a lot of answers, but a lot of questions in the report. There are questions, and we have the answers. As the Chief Constable mentioned, the crime rates are down because people are at home. What is of concern to me is about the abuse, which is being read as the sexual crime at the beginning of the lockdown when people are at home. People are people everywhere. Although there is a reduction in sexual crime, North Wales Police has high level of sexual abuse compared with other forces. Why are the rates higher in the north and other areas? We have looked at these figures for a few years now to understand, and the figures are coming down nationally. I think the reason, not that North Wales is more dangerous, but the fact that we have specialist units which investigate these instances and the way we record the crimes over the years. A lot of sexual crimes are hidden crimes, and people now have more confidence here because we have specialist units looking into it in a more professional manner. That isn't to criticise other forces, but we do think that we are recording more than other forces.
Right. John. Where's John gone? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I'm here, just unmuting. On the 2nd of November, you hosted the Lost Voices, Lost Lives online conference, during which time you unveiled your drug policy. Just a bit concerned, because within the drug policy, you mentioned a number of diversionary methods, one being Checkpoint Cymru, and the other the drug education programme. Now, I happen to think that Checkpoint Cymru is doing well, but my understanding was that Bangor University were going to evaluate this. Have they actually evaluated it as yet?
We've had some interim evaluations, John. Not what I expected. Not that checkpoints were doing anything wrong, but I expected a better quality evaluation. I must be honest, and I think that's the general consensus. Perhaps Stephen, who chairs the Checkpoint Scrutiny Board, will perhaps comment more on that.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. I agree, John. I think overall Checkpoint is performing well. I think we've got to be fair that it's still, although it's sort of a year old now, we're still dealing with not necessarily teething issues, but it's not delivering exactly what we first envisaged, if I put it that way. A lot of that comes down to communication and just understanding of what the program is there to do, and we're dealing with that. The evaluation from Bangor didn't work out as we planned. A lot of that was down to sickness issues at their end. Unfortunately, can't be helped, but we are where we are. So we have just recently actually approached Durham Constabulary, who obviously were the one of the first forces in the UK to implement this kind of program. So we've approached Durham to see if they'd actually carry out a peer review and to evaluate the first 12 months and identify where improvements can be made, what's working well, and how we can tweak the program moving forward in the future.
Okay, thank you. Going on from that, the policy also goes on about your provision of naloxone to serving officers. But again, I understand that hasn't been scrutinised as yet either, has it?
No, that will be evaluated in January. I spoke to the Deputy Chief Constable the other day. The officers that have had trained and do carry naloxone haven't had cause to use it as yet, which is self. So we will. I will continue to have conversations with the Deputy Chief Constable. I would really like to see it rolled out to every officer. It is being trialled in 3 divisions in Police Scotland at the moment, as well as in West Midlands. I know the West Midland Police have it.
Okay, thank you. And then the other part of there, there's 2 other things really, was the HAT project, which is Heroin Assisted Treatment Scheme, which I'm not even sure if that's legal, but my other point is that you say in terms of the nighttime economy and festivals within North Wales, you're maintaining that drug testing should become a normal part of the nighttime economy. How does this sort of fit in with what the Chief Constable has just been saying about there has been a big increase in positive drug testing in vehicles? And all I'm saying is you've introduced a policy here which hasn't been evaluated in any way at all, from what I can gather.
I don't think there's any conflict at all with driving. You know, we have exactly the same approach to drink driving, yeah. And alcohol has been legal for as long as any of us can remember, and before that as well. The purpose of the proposals in the drug policy, yeah, is to save lives. Pure and simple. It is issued, and HAT, heroin assisted treatment, is most certainly legal. There are 22 people in North Wales who get prescribed medicinal diamorphine because they are long-standing problematic opioid users. So, you know, HAT is only a development of what's already available.
Okay, I just to make the point in terms of the drink driving and breathalyzer, you're treating the drivers as rational human beings, but it seems to make a logical choice as to whether to drink or not. But it seems to be in drug users, you're saying they're not rational.
I didn't say that. I don't really follow what you're trying to say.
Okay, all right. We'll disagree on that then. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Did you want to say anything about anything, Carl? What John's asked? Whilst you're there, you're on mute.
2 buttons again, Chair. 2 buttons failed. So it was just around the lock zone. R1 summed it up really well. We haven't used it yet, but that's a really positive. I genuinely think we'll work through the pilot, but this is around potentially saving people's lives. If we can't do that, there's something's wrong. So I think R1 and I are both on the same page, right?
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? Because I've just got one. Can I just go back to the RHIs, please? You're going to have a conversation with Dana after the meeting, Arvon. Could you just keep Dawn in the loop, just so, but not to record it, just so that she's aware of everything that's going on?
I will seek a view from the vulnerabilities unit, the DS there, on how she sees local authority return to home interviews working out and what intelligence we get from them.
Okay.
I will make that request to North Wales Police.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Diolch fawr. No more questions, I don't think, are there? No. So can we have a proposer, please, and a seconder to note the report? Dana, you're a proposer, seconder? Alan, thank you very much, both. And members, a show of hands, please, to note the periodic update. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So we go on to item 8B. Over to you, Kate.
And our bow.
At
the last panel
Good afternoon, everyone.
I reported that we were expecting our accounts to be signed off imminently, and I'm pleased to report to the panel that our joint audit committee went ahead as planned on the 5th of October. Audit Wales gave both corporations sole unqualified audit opinions, and the accounts were signed off on the 7th of October, and these are published on our website. Those of you who are familiar with local government accounts will know how complex they are. One of our joint audit committee members recommended that the Commissioner and I publish a short introduction, and there are links to it within my paper. This outlines the most important financial information, so if panel members or members of the public want a short and simple guide to our financial performance last year, I would recommend this document to them. The second part of my report considers this year's budget. At the end of October, there was a projected revenue underspend of 1.383 million. Explanations for the largest variances are within the report. While this underspend is larger than we have seen in recent years, it's worth bearing in mind that some activities such as training have been reduced or delayed due to COVID, and we will need to get back on track with these at some point. Therefore, the intention is to earmark the underspend for this purpose. And that gives us a nice segue into the next part of the report, which concerns COVID-19. To the end of October, our additional net cost was 1.362 million. We're receiving grants for all of our PPE, not just the medical grade, and a proportion of our income, but the remaining costs must be met by in-year budgets or reserves. And that amounted to £844,000 as at the end of November. We've been notified of search grant of £309,000, and at the moment we're assuming this will cover the related cost. Moving on to capital, the COVID pandemic has affected the speed of our capital programme. And members will note that since the last report, 4.1 million has been reprofiled into future years. Having said that, the programme is progressing, and this is in line with the revised timetables. I'd like to take the opportunity to inform members of the budget planning process for 2021-22. Carl did steal quite a lot of my thunder, so I won't repeat everything he said. So last year we introduced a process called priority resource planning, and this enabled the force to rank the importance of activities and to be able to adjust those activities to the budget available. And I was privileged to be able to observe the later stages of the process. A similar process is taking again this year, and again I've been able to observe. Something positive that's arisen from COVID is that many of our meetings are now taking place online, and the effect of this is that the number of participants is no longer limited by the space in our meeting rooms. This means that more managers were able to be in the meeting at the same time, and that's changed the tone of the discussions, and this year has felt really collaborative, with managers supporting each other and working through solutions together. While we're unable to indicate what services and council tax will look like until we receive the provisional settlement, I can assure the panel that the process is thorough, robust and fair, and I'm looking forward to presenting the Commissioner's proposals in February. Diolch am wrando ysgynnoch gwestiynau. Thanks for listening. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Kate. Anybody got any questions for Kate? Dana?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, but to be honest, I totally agree with Kate. The Chief Constable covered everything in that, whistle stop tour within the presentation, and I think he also clarified a number of points around the budget as well. So many of the questions I had in front of panel really were clarified in the presentation. So looking at the report, and the finance officer has given us a really detailed summary. There's 4 million environments, isn't there? So basically, once they've been spent, they move over into the correct cost code, really, don't they? So that is fine. It makes sense as well, I think, for us to the transfer of the underspend into reserves, because I think we all recognise that that expenditure is going to occur. It's just delayed expenditure rather than a saving, really, isn't it? So that makes sense. My concern really is always about that we get the COVID recovery monies that we should be getting, and looking at this report, it explains to us in detail really that I think about a third of our COVID costs at the moment is being covered out of our own budget, and about 75% of the income generation that we usually generate, only that is being recovered. So there's a gap there as well. Whilst I recognise there's savings on transport, I think that's something the panel, needs to keep an eye on. And in addition as well, I think the expenditure on IT and the investment in IT, much of that has been dragged down early, isn't it? Because of the circumstances that we find ourselves in with regards to this pandemic. So whilst the report is good from a bottom line underspend point of view, I think realistically we need to recognise that that is just a delayed expenditure, and therefore, that's why it really needs to move into reserves. So it's just to ask Kate really if she's got, because we're talking about flat budgets, if she's got any concerns really that the panel need to be aware of. I know I've had the conversation earlier with the Chief Constable, but if you've got any concerns really the panel need to be aware of, because we have agreed as well to send off this joint letter, and it would be prudent for any concerns to be raised, within that letter really as well, wouldn't it? So I'd really appreciate Kate's expertise in what we really need to be keeping a watch on and what concerns there are around the future budget. Thank you, Chair.
Welcome.
Yeah, the thing that keeps me awake at night from a financial perspective is ESN. We don't have any real clarity what flat cash means. Those are the noises that we're hearing, but until we get the settlement, we're expecting the provisional settlement later this week, but until we get that, we won't actually be certain what that means for us. And members will be aware the last couple of years I've come with the council tax proposal to panel and said we might need to consider increasing our reserves. Compared to when I started this job, the reserves are much lower, and we've got this significant expense for ESN, probably 2 years away. But if we don't put the money into reserves, what we don't put into reserves to pay for it, we will have to borrow to pay for it. and then borrowing, there's an interest cost associated with that. So it's trying to get that balance right when I come back to you in February. But as I said, until we get the provisional settlement, I cannot say to you, we need to put X pounds into reserves and we need X pounds in council tax, because until we see what flat cash looks like, there isn't much clarity I can give you about how much money we're going to need through council tax.
Dana, quickly then.
Yeah, if I can come back really quickly, is there any pressures around pensions as well that we need to be aware of, Kate?
Well, immediately, one of the questions with flat cash, the last 2 years, I think we've had about 1.5 million in pensions grant that we got when the police pension cost increased by about 3 million. So we got about half of that in grant, and we don't know whether that is part of our flat cash or not. Also with auto enrolment, there are more officers who have everybody who's not enrolled in the pension scheme is enrolled, and they don't all drop out again. So that creates a cost. In about 3 years' time, we don't know what's going to happen with employers' contribution, but if the discount rate reduces again, then they might increase again. And then there's the McLeod judgment and the remedy to do with that, which is again likely to increase our costs. So it's the Chief Constable unmuted. Did you want to speak, Carl?
Yeah, so that we've been very critical of ourselves over the last few years around the number of young in-service officers that have not enrolled in the pension. The auto enrolment has absolutely done the right thing of getting people on. The flip side of that is the £500,000 impact that it's had to do it. So absolutely the right thing to do, but there is an impact there. The other thing that Kate hasn't mentioned is PEQF, so the funding element around PEQF. So Wales is still not being treated the same way as England around forces around PEQF. So that is currently sat with the Home Office, Treasury and Education now to hopefully come back to Wales, because it's been raised as high as we can around the parity around that, because that cost will keep on growing as we get more and more officers that are going to go through the PEQF system in Wales.
Can you just explain to those that don't know what PEQS is, please, Carl?
Yeah, sorry, that's my fault. It's the police educational qualification, which is effectively if you're joining policing now and you have not got a degree, you have to go through the PEQF, which is a 3-year apprenticeship. So you're praised as a cop, you're employed as a cop, but you're on a 3-year degree apprenticeship. So it's a great offer for people joining us, absolutely fantastic. But because of the way the funding has been done between education predominantly in Wales, we don't get that money at the moment that our English forces do.
Why not?
Well, it depends who you listen to, Chair. If you listen to, and Kate's giggling, if you listen to Welsh Government, it will say that it's English, the English Government. If you listen to the English Government, they'll say it's the Welsh Government. And we've been asking for that now for a period of time. We've raised it with the Secretary of State for Wales formally, who has taken it back into the Home Office, who has raised it with the Policing Minister. So there is a meeting going on this week, next week, as far as we know, for the 3 bodies, corporate bodies to come together to come back to us. But we've been getting a rollover cover really for the last 2 years, which is only rollover. It's not dealing with the fundamental issue, which is the funding element that goes underneath it. Okay. So England will say we've paid Wales. Wales will say you haven't. If it is a simple answer, Kate, isn't it?
Policing is not devolved, education is devolved. So the English government say that they have given the money to the Welsh government for education, and the Welsh government say they haven't had the money for policing. And
right, I understand.
And we're stuck in the middle of it.
So somewhere in the middle of the ether is this money.
Yes, we have paid the apprenticeship levy. If we were forced in England, they are able to allocate that money for PEQF, but we don't have an employer's fund in the same way that an English force does. So we can't use that money in that way. And as I said, it's stuck somewhere between the English government and the Welsh government as to where our money has got to.
Okay, right.
Chair, I think Richard wants to come in.
Yeah, Dana, and then Richard. Where's Richard gone? Oh, he's there. Dana, you go quickly, and then Richard.
Yeah, and that's where the concern is. This audit trail, we can't demonstrate from any audit trail that money is coming back into Wales. And as the Chief Constable pointed out, the finance officer, policing isn't devolved. So my understanding is that the apprenticeship levy that we in Wales pay in, that is set in with the College of Policing, but that money is only distributed into England. And we can't see through this audit trail that any of it's coming back into Wales. So that's another huge pressure, because we're paying the full whack for all our training, aren't we, in Wales, basically, for that qualification, which is a required qualification. And it's a good qualification for all the reasons the Chief Constable has laid out. And it's just getting some answers around this. So I think we spoke as a panel about this last year, around about this time, didn't we? And it's something that we need to continue putting pressure on. I think, one of our roles as a panel as well is to raise, any issues on that national platform as well. And I think we really need to be vocal in doing that, because there's huge concerns coming around now, especially, with the talk of flat budgets. But as the finance officer said, we don't really know what that flat budget looks like. And if you take into consideration what's been top sliced, as well as what's not included in our Wales flat budget, things could become really difficult quite quickly, couldn't they? And, we as a panel want our policing in Wales, well, especially in North Wales, to be as effective as it can be. And that is obviously very much reliant on budgets, Chair.
That's right. Richard. Thanks, Dana.
I'm sorry, my point's a little bit old now. I was just wanted to clarify before Kate mentioned that it was the apprenticeship levy, that this is what we were talking about. I just wanted to remind members, obviously we are fully aware of this, and we've been working with the OPCC over a number of years. We've raised it with the WLGA to have that kind of parity for Welsh police forces. So, we have lent our support to the OPCC and to the police force over the last couple of years. And a couple of years ago, I think the position was that you were getting some funding. But again, it was just to make members aware of that was the topic discussed.
Yeah, I realise now. Perhaps if there's some meetings going on this week, perhaps you could let Dawn and Richard know the results, Carl. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. No further questions?
Right.
Edgar and Kate.
Yeah, just into your question.
I just got a comment, really. Even flat cash is a cut for us, because I know they have announced that there is a pay freeze, but we've got 5 months of this year's pay increase to pay in next year that we haven't paid this year. And also about 20% of our expenditure is not on pay related items, and normal inflation will apply to those items, and some of those, particularly in the IT sphere, a significantly higher percentage than general inflation.
Right, thank you, Kate. Did you say Edgar wanted a word, Dawn?
Yes, he does.
Edgar Tibarod?
Yes, I don't know if you
Are
remember.
you ready?
The first meeting I ever came to, which was held in Conway. I asked a question in relation to that I was concerned about the reserves being used to balance the books.
Yeah.
And I'm still concerned about that. And I asked the question if we had a policy, and nobody knew. And I asked if you'd come back with the answer. I still haven't had the answer. And the other thing is, with this money being put in reserve that hasn't been used, but is going to be used, it should not be taken into consideration when we get to know what money we're getting from the Welsh Government in doing this year and this next year's from 21-22.
Right, can I answer that in turn?
By all means.
Generally, we have a policy that we don't use reserves to balance the budget. We use, because reserves can be used just the once, we
Yeah,
use
quite.
them for things like capital, or if we've got variations in expenditure between years. So if one year the expenditure is higher and another year it's lower, we'll balance that through reserves. What we're not doing is depleting our reserves in order to give the impression that we're spending less money than we are. Does that
Yes.
help?
Yeah, well, you know, the thing, the matter, the crunch of the matter is the reserves are going down.
They are going down,
Yeah.
but if you consider we spent £25 million on the combination of building the new building at Fly and the Wrexham Town Centre, we spent £4 million almost replacing Llandudno Police Station. So those are items that will last for many, many years, for decades.
Yeah, I understand that, but if you've got the money there, it's better than chasing the money if you borrow it, you know?
Indeed. So, but I have known of other public bodies that they would use their reserves to support their revenue expenditure, not just to smooth it out between years, but actually to show that the requirement for the budget is lower than it actually is, and we don't do that.
Yeah, you don't know what you're going to get this year after now.
Indeed. So we will match our resources and our expenditure to one another for next year, and we try to do that on an ongoing basis rather than say, oh, we've got some money in reserve so we don't need to set the council tax too high. If we find there's a shortfall, we will either reduce our expenditure or we will increase our council tax to make sure that we have enough money in the budget for our expected expenditure.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks very much indeed, Kate. No more questions, and conscious time is moving on. Can we have a proposer and a seconder, please, to note this report? Dana, thank you very much, proposer, and diolch I ti, Dylan, as a seconder.
Thank you,
And a show
Dylan.
of hands, please, all of you who... Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed yet again, Kate. A lot of work gone on to that, and to you, Dana. Can we go on to item 9A, please? Richard, you're going to lead this, aren't you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The first report, we've got one of two reports. The first report is to deal with the panel's mid-year monitoring of the use of the Home Office grant. And this is between the period of 1st of April 2020 and the 30th of September 2020. Sorry, Alan, do you?
No.
Sorry,
No.
No, sorry. And obviously, as part of the monitoring, as part of the Home Office grant funding agreement, we now have to look at what are called critical success factors. So we've listed those in paragraph 3.5 of the report. So I'll just take you through some of those just for information. And again, it's just looking at what the panel's been able to produce during the 6 months in terms of reports, etc., and openness and transparency and accountability to the public. So just a few of those. Naturally, due to the pandemic, we've only been able to have one formal meeting, which was on the 28th of September. And we've had two informal catch-up meetings in August. The complaints subcommittee has met on 2 occasions to determine 1 complaint. There have been some reports, an annual report, member expenses and allowances report as well. We've responded to the Home Office consultation into the PCC review part 1, and obviously await PCC part 2 in the new year. We've also acknowledged various OPCC reports, including the Commissioner's COVID-19 response plan. And then we've continued with our normal business in relation to protocol for questions. Member champion engagement has obviously continued during the pandemic. Thanks to obviously virtual platforms, we've still been able to deliver that support and scrutiny function. So most of the member champions have still been able to meet virtually with OPCC staff and North Wales Police staff as well. So that's great. During this reporting period, we've also joined the National Association for Police, Fire and Crime Panels. And I think that is going to be of great benefit to us, really. I think around 31, 32 of the 41 police and crime panels across England and Wales have joined. Pat has also been invited to observe the executive committee. So again, it's having that forum for best practice, to be aware of a bit of horizon scanning and to be aware of national issues like we mentioned with ESN. Good to be part of that. I think we'll definitely see the advantages of that. And then obviously in terms of value for money, we've obviously been able to save some money because of the fact that we haven't had to hold physical meetings in Bodlondeb and Conway, and that we've been able to stream our meetings virtually. And obviously that increases openness and transparency because we're live streamed and we can also be viewed online as well. So our expenditure for that for the half year is around 22,000. You'll see it in Appendix 1 of the report, just over 22,000 out of a grant allocation of 70,975. So the recommendations are there in paragraph 2, really, to note the report, to approve the report, and also just in terms of forecasts, very briefly, looking forward, obviously this is going back to 1st of October 2020. So in terms of forecasting our spend into the second half of the financial year, we were glad that 6 panel members and officers could take part in the national conference that was held by Frontline Consulting and Warwick University, which was a fantastic conference. A number of plenary sessions with Lord Toby Smith, Paddy Tipping, Chair of the APCC, and Andy Burnham as well. So a fantastic event. I'm sure we all learned a lot from that. And then in terms of panel meetings, including this one, 2, if not another 3 panel meetings in the second half of the financial year, and other work streams, as I've just mentioned, the PCC review part 2. So
it's something to get used to, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Say-
Nadolig Awen a blwyddyn newydd dda pawb.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you all for your support.
All the best, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye. There we are.